Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the January 20th, 2022 meeting of the Harbor Commissioners. Ms. Rodriguez, would you provide us with a roll call?
Can you guys see me yet?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, here.
All right, Commissioner Kramer?
Here.
Commissioner Hanrahan?
Present.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Stanowik?
Here.
And Commissioner Stedman?
Here.
Chair McCray?
Here.
All right, everybody's here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask if there are any changes to the agenda this evening.
No, Chair McCray, no changes. We're cleared for takeoff.
That sounds great. And do we have anybody waiting for a general public comment on items that are not on the agenda this evening?
At this time, I don't see any hands raised, but I would like to remind the public if they'd like to comment on anything not on the agenda, they can indicate that by using the raise their hand icon on the control panel. And when it's their turn, I'll notify them to speak and they'll have 2 minutes. And I still do not see anybody.
All righty. Okay, in that case, we'll advance to the consent calendar, and we have the approval of last meeting's minutes. It was last year and a couple of months ago. The recommendation is that we waive further reading and approve the minutes.
So moved. Seconded.
So it's moved and seconded. There's no other comments. I'll call for a roll call vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Okay, Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, agree.
Okay, Commissioner Kramer?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanrahan?
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stanowik?
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman?
Yes, but can I note that the 2 new commissioners were not in attendance at the last meeting for the minutes that we're approving right now?
Yeah, for the commission, I'll give a little clarification for the new commissioners. They can approve the minutes as well if they reviewed them, but typically some folks, if they're not present for the meeting, they can abstain, but that's no big deal either way. Maybe we can go through it again. So Commissioner Hanrahan and Commissioner Anderson, this approving of the minutes is a pretty repetitive process. We do it every meeting at the start, and it's sort of based on the last go around's meeting minutes. So if you did go through them, you can certainly approve them. If you hadn't and didn't feel comfortable because you weren't present, you can also abstain from any motion. So
yeah, I did speak to Angela about that earlier, so I was happy to approve.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I did review the minutes from the previous session and approve of them.
Thank you.
Okay, and then
Excellent.
Chair McCray, we just need your vote still.
I approve.
All right, that's unanimous then. Thank you.
Thank you. So that moves us to Harbor Commission matters, excuse me. We have the reappointment of Mr. John Stedman to the commission. Commissioner Stedman, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Chairman McCray. I will say this, for the newly appointed commissioners, you're in for a rewarding 4 years, not only from the type of work that comes before the Harbor Commission, but the opportunity to work with the colleagues that you're going to find to be, competent and educated and very active. So I congratulate you guys. Actually, that's what I want to take my time for, is to congratulate our 2 new commissioners, and also just say how happy I was to see Director Wiltshire today, and Department Chair Bossy or Manager Bossy, whatever you want to call him, and also Eric, Head of Operations. I saw both of them today. So, and thanks to Angela for putting together the fresh notebooks for everyone at the beginning of our year. So I'm looking forward to getting some work done, guys. Thanks a lot, Merritt.
Thank you, Commissioner Stedman. We also have two new appointees to our commission. We have Seth Anderson. Seth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm an import to Santa Barbara for the last 7 years. My wife is from here. We opened up a business after a year of being here. It's a restaurant. And I was just been fascinated on the civil service side of things, on working with the city and trying to make things better for the city. So I was really happy to be appointed to the Harbor Commission. As you all said, it seems like one of the more exciting, or one that's got a lot of action going on with it. And I'm just happy to be a part of the team.
Thank you very much.
And I look forward to hopefully spending actual time with you all once the Zoom meetings would be cleared up, and having these meetings in person would be great.
We always hope for that.
Yeah.
And we have Michael Hanrahan. Commissioner Hanrahan, would you like to say a few words of introduction?
Thank you, Chair McCray, and wonderful to be able to address the commission. And thank you all very much for taking a moment to hear me. I am a 25-year resident of Santa Barbara. I am a filmmaker. I produce natural history documentaries for the last 20 years. And during COVID, I took up a new profession as the film industry fell a bit flat in yacht sales here in the harbor and at Seacoast. So I'm on the docks regularly. I spend a lot of time in the harbor and out the island, and I'm really excited to part in assisting the management of the harbor in continuing to execute on a very clean, very well-run harbor along the California coast. So excited to be a part of it. And thanks again for the opportunity to introduce myself.
Thank you, and I'm familiar with your work. I know that you've worked with the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary quite a bit. Great work there, and we look forward to more good work here. I couldn't echo Commissioner Stedman's initial comments more strongly. Thank you for coming aboard. We're grateful to have you. With that, I'd like to turn to Mr. Mike Wiltshire for his director's director's report.
Yeah, okay. Well, good evening, Harbor Commissioners. Yeah, it's nice to have a full commission and it's working with such a robust group, and it's been really great the couple years I've been here. So it's always tough to see faces go, but really nice to see faces fill the gaps again. So Happy New Year to everyone. So this is our first meeting of January of 2022. So for the public and anyone tuned in, I'm Mike Wiltshire, Waterfront Director. Echo, I had high hopes of meeting in person by now as well, but with everything going on, we'll likely be virtual at least for another couple months. We've got a fairly busy meeting today, so I'll get started on my portion unless there's any pressing questions up front. Next slide, Angela. All right, so I just wanted to echo again and welcome the new Harbor Commissioners, Hanrahan and Anderson, from a staff point of view. So the waterfront staff had the chance to meet with both of them over the break and help kind of get them up to speed and learn a little bit more about them. So I hope that was helpful. For the rest of the commission, we went through Harbor Commission welcome binder. There's kind of a lot of useful information in there, meeting schedules, Brown Act information, really just a lot of other helpful stuff about Harbor Commission and the waterfront department side of things. So it was kind of a good chance to informally touch base one-on-one with the new commissioners. And in giving out those binders, we thought, hey, it might be a good idea to pass these out to the entire Harbor Commission. So Angela put those together. I believe she's gotten them to all of you. I did see Betsy and John down here today, so I know they picked up theirs. And so we kind of intended it for new Harbor Commissioners, but thought, hey, this has got a lot of good info for everybody. So passed it out to all of you as well. Next slide. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to call attention to 2022 being the 150th anniversary of the construction of Stearns Wharf. Stearns Wharf is an amazingly unique and important piece of infrastructure in Santa Barbara, and it's just really played such a pivotal role and a huge role in Santa Barbara's history. So the wharf was completed in the fall of 1872 by John Peck Stearns. He was a businessman mainly involved in lumber, and the wharf played just a giant role in kind of shaping Santa Barbara and putting Santa Barbara on the map, really allowed for growth of the city and easier access for industry and all sorts of things that sort of grew the city to what it is today. The wharf spent the majority of its history serving private industry, ranging from lumber to fishing to oil. And this went on really up until the 1980s when, really up into the 1980s, it was solely operated by private industry. Changed hands a number of times in private industry, but its history was mainly private and not an entity that was owned by the city. Next slide, Angela. So the wharf's had a really tough history, to be honest. So it was battered by numerous storms. Nearly constant maintenance has occurred over the last 150 years. There's been numerous fires on the wharf that have almost completely taken it out. And the wharf was actually condemned and completely closed from 1973 to 1981. This is sort of when it changed hands from the private sector to the public sector. So the city took over the wharf in the 1980s, and it essentially kind of developed it into what it is today. So this included all the construction of the existing buildings out there and the renovation and major construction of the structures that exist. So that's when in the 80s is when the wharf really pivoted from sort of private serving to sort of a public resource. Next slide. Yeah, just to put into a little perspective of what myself and most waterfront staff lose sleep over every night is the potential for a fire. So this was one of the major fires that happened in the 80s. I think this was the Harbor Restaurant fire that really nearly destroyed the entire wharf. There hasn't been a fire this large in a long time, but there are minor fires very regularly, almost on an annual basis. There's kind of small fires. So always a concern with a large wooden wharf. Next slide. All right, so a quick little look at Stearns Wharf today. So Stearns Wharf sees anywhere up to 1 million visitors a year. This makes it one of Santa Barbara's really kind of most iconic and most visited destinations. We have 16 commercial waterfront tenants on the wharf, and they collectively generate about $20 million a year in revenue. So it's a pretty large economic engine. The wharf is owned and operated by the city and is completely maintained by waterfront staff. From the waterfront department, the maintenance and upkeep of the wharf, we put in about $2 million a year just to maintain and keep that wharf status quo. So pretty huge endeavor to keep it what it is. Next slide. All right, I think this is my last slide, but so and that was kind of a really deep and dirty dive into Stearns Wharf history. If anyone has any more interest, I've got a couple books on hand. There's just a ton of information out there about the history of Stearns Wharf, and it's extremely interesting, all the ebbs and flows of what's happened down there. But it really goes without saying that it's a pretty amazing piece of infrastructure. So ourselves, the waterfront department, have been working with the wharf merchants over the last few months to kind of start lining up some events for 2022 to help really just promote the wharf over the next year. Some of the things that are going to be going on down there. So Wharf Wednesdays. And so first Wednesday of every month, All the tenants down there have agreed on daily specials. We're going to try and arrange some live music, other events kind of throughout the year as we grow and plan. We're currently working with the commercial fishermen to try and dial in a fisherman's market out on the wharf, and also in contact with the farmers market, same sort of thing, try and get a farmers market out there. And later in the fall, which is kind of when the actual the wharf was completed. So we're targeting either September or October to do a kind of a larger celebration with a fireworks display and live music. So we're just kind of getting going in the early stages, but we're really hoping to kind of draw a lot of attention to the wharf, get a lot of the locals down there, and just kind of remind everybody of what kind of an amazing piece of infrastructure we have. As a side note, so the wharf's 150th has already been picked up by the LA Times and a few other news agencies. So it's kind of gaining some steam, and we can anticipate that that'll sort of drive some tourism and drive some people up there and be good for the tenants and good for us, and kind of just a good thing to call out. I know that was kind of quick and dirty, but that brings me to the end of mine. Does the commission have any questions on Stearns Wharf or anything I've talked about thus far? Yeah, Commissioner Kramer.
Yeah, hi, thank you for your report. Very interesting. What would be the Wharf Farmers Market? What would they be selling?
Yeah, that's kind of TBD. So the commercial fishermen, we're trying to work with them to do something really similar to the Saturday Fisherman's Market, but kind of transplant it over onto the wharf to get a little bit of interest over there. The farmers market idea is just to kind of have a conventional farmers market down there. So something like the Tuesday one on State Street or the weekend one, but have those same farmers and vendors just relocate to the wharf for something unique and interesting.
Huh, so it wouldn't be the fish caught off the wharf then?
Well, that's still TBD. We're working with the commercial fishermen, and so they would potentially do that. They would maybe bring a boat up and tie up off to the wharf and have a fish market, and maybe we could do them kind of in unison, where it's a farmer's market and a commercial fish market all together as sort of one bigger thing.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. And Commissioner Kramer, that made it really easy. I see that there's a little raised hand icon down there.
Right, okay, I'll lower my hand.
No, that really helps. It's a good way to kind of notice if somebody wants to speak. So that's an easy way to go.
Commissioner Hanrahan.
Thank you, Chair McCray. Just thinking that this is like a great opportunity for City TV to do a short piece highlighting the history of Stearns Wharf so that our local community can be more aware of this place that Stearns Wharf is. Anything in the works to create a short film about Stearns Wharf? Or maybe there's one.
Yeah, Commissioner Hanrahan, good point. Funny enough, they have done a couple. So City TV did one recently, I believe it was last year, and took a bunch of footage and kind of a brief history. There was another couple entities who did some historical video on Stearns Wharf. We've got a great resource in-house with Chris Bell. He's kind of our public information officer. He's fantastic, and he's right on top of that. So I'll talk with him, and he's going to be speaking later on cruise ships. But between what City TV has and what a couple other entities have, I think there is some really good footage out there.
Great. I know that character, Chris Bell. He'll do a great job.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the business services report. And so I'll turn to Mr. Brian Bossy.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Brian Bossy, Waterfront Business Manager. And I'm here tonight to give you a brief update on the deferred rent program for waterfront tenants. Now, some of you already know, but to our new commissioners, when COVID really took hold back in March of 2020, the city and the waterfront department in particular realized that was going to be a struggle for all of our tenants, especially not knowing what sort of restrictions would be placed on them. And then as the restrictions came out, we realized this is going to be tough. We want to try and do our best to keep our tenants. So we developed a deferred rent program. And what that did is allowed our tenants to defer their rent from April of 2020 through December of 2020. So for 8 months, they did not have to pay rent. So we went without that rent, not only base rent, but obviously percentage rent for things like our restaurants and things like that. And so at the outset of our program, 19 of the existing 61 tenants, sorry, I should say next slide, Angela, sorry. I got too excited to give you the report. So at the start of the program, 19 of our 61 tenants enrolled in the deferred rent program. Next slide, please. So as part of that program, we wanted to encourage our tenants to pay back what they owed us. We didn't want to go 4 years without that rent. And so we developed an incentive program as well that was only available to tenants that incurred or suffered an economic hardship. And so we defined economic hardship as a revenue loss of 25% or greater when compared to the 3 previous years, calendar years sales averages. So those years were 2017, 18, and 19. So we left out 2020 because it was so wonky. And so again, that was only available to those who incurred that 25% or more revenue loss. And it ended up about 11 of the 19 actually lost more than 25% of their sales. So it worked like this. If you were to pay, you would get 20% relief on deferred rents if you paid by December 31st of 21. And you can see as it rolls out, 10%, 12/31/22, 5% relief on deferred rents by 12/31/2023. And then if you left it until December 31st of 2024, you didn't get any benefit. You just had to pay what you owed us in whole. Next slide, please. So going back, again, we had 19 tenants enrolled in the program as of December 31st of 2020. And that totaled about $1.5 million in deferred rent. That's quite a big hit we took. Everybody was taking hit, we took ours as well. So as part of that incentive program, I should have mentioned those who did not receive economic hardship, who did not incur an economic hardship, they had to pay the full amount by December 31st of 2021. Sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. So if you didn't get incur economic hardship, you had to pay it all by the end of last year. If you incurred that hardship, then you were allowed to participate in the incentive program. So as of January 1st, just a couple weeks ago, 16 tenants have paid back the entirety of their deferred rent. And currently only 3 tenants remain owing the city to the tune of approximately $79,000. So that's essentially a 95% success rate as far as our incentive program and just the deferred rent program in general. So we're very happy with that. And again, to date, we have 100% tenant retention. No tenants had to close up shop and leave during really the meat and potatoes of that COVID pandemic. So obviously we're still dealing with its variants, but
We'll see if Brian comes back, but he was just kind of wrapping it up anyway. But yeah, just to reiterate, this was a huge success. This deferred rent program couldn't really have gone any better. So we really kind of really touting how well it worked, or really kind of happy with how our tenants are doing. And so back a year ago, it seemed like the sky was falling, and this was a really good way to get through. And so we really just couldn't have expected this level. This is really as good as it could have got. So it's like, Brian, you back?
I am.
All right, welcome
There
back.
he is.
Oh, geez, where'd I cut off?
No, you pretty much wrapped it up. You were in good shape.
Okay. So yeah, as Mike said, it's been a success. I know the Parks Department was also going to pursue this program if they had similar issues with their tenants. They only have a couple of tenants. I think they came through unscathed. The airport did not have to develop such a program because they received funding from the federal, help me out, Mike, the folks who manage our airports. And then I also helped downtown parking with this program as well with a few of their tenants. So it's been a great success. Again, happy to answer any questions.
I see no hands raised. And we have our traditional fashion, which is just to raise a hand on screen. I would like to say that this has been a great success, it sounds like, and kudos to you, Mr. Bossy. I'm sure it took a lot of brainstorming and working through ideas to come up with a good one, and it certainly was, and it seems to have worked phenomenally well. We've got all our prime people still with us. And almost all of that debt is paid back, 95%, you said.
Yeah, very
ahead.
happy with that. And I'll be honest here, this was a Mike Wiltshire idea. So we just kind of picked it up and developed the percentages and kind of rolled with it. So kudos to Mr. Wiltshire. I don't want to steal his thunder. That wouldn't work out well for me.
Well, very good. I'm glad that you guys managed to come up with a great plan. Thank you, Mr. Wiltshire, and in that. I'd also like to reach back a little bit and thank Angela for the great binders. There's a lot of good information in there, stuff that we could all use, everything from meeting schedules to the Robert's Rules of Order and how you get things done and that kind of thing. It was a great effort, and thank you very much for getting it out to all of us. With that, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Betsy. Well, Betsy's muted right now. I just wanted to ask Brian, the financials are of the Harbor Department. Whose idea was it, or was it a committee that came up with the revitalization program for Stearns Wharf? I mean, that seemed, or the celebration program.
So you mean the 150, the celebration?
Yeah, I mean, we're, considering the farmer's market and the live music and all that stuff.
So every other month, even months, actually, the Stearns Wharf Business Association meets and staff attends, and we go through a set agenda and just talk about the happenings on the wharf, budget, things like that. And so this came up probably, I'd say 2-3 years ago. Neil Bruskin, out on the wharf of Nature Zone and the president of the Stearns Wharf Merchants Association, started thinking about the idea. And so it's been in the works for quite some time. And so he just kind of laid it out, and Chris Bell and Pat Henry and Mr. Wiltshire jumped on it, and we're kind of rolling with it and helping them out and seeing what we can do to really celebrate an important icon on the South Coast and definitely in the city.
I think that's, all of it taken together is going to be great for business, Brian. So
definitely,
awesome.
and that's a nice, hopefully side benefit of all, definite. Yeah, but we all agree it's an important piece of our history and should be celebrated as such.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much. And that would bring us to the next item on the agenda, which would be business COVID-19. Looks like Brian Adair is up next with a little bit on the facilities.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Brian Adair. I'm the Waterfront Facilities Manager, and I'd like to give you a facilities management update report. Next slide, please. First order of business is to really honor and appreciate our hardworking staff here at the maintenance and waterfront, and their hard work. They get a chance to have an opportunity to be promoted within. So we went out for recruitment, and we have 2 people that were promoted. First one is Terry Franson, who was promoted to maintenance crew leader. He's a life resident of Santa Barbara, was a local fisherman for 26 years. Of those 26 years, he had his own boat. He was his own captain. He was a carpenter for 10 years. He started working for the waterfront in 2019, and he's an avid surfer, and he still enjoys boating. Next slide, please. We have another fine example of an excellent employee, David Running. He was promoted to senior maintenance worker on the wharf. He leads our dive program, and he does a really good job of keeping the program up to date, making sure that the divers are safe, well trained. He watches them real carefully. Outstanding job. He's a native coastal resident. He's been with the waterfront since 2015, and he's a harbor liveaboard for many years. So he's here 24/7, and he lives and breathes the harbor and the waterfront, and he's a really fine young man and gentleman. Next slide, please. I just want to catch up. Back in November, we did our annual beach berm construction on Mission Creek and Ledbetter. These are considered soft structures. Also, we want to be environmentally correct, so we do our avian surveys before any equipment goes on the beach each day. This is an annual cost of $37,000. The berm went up the weeks of November 15th. Next slide, please. This is a photograph of the berm going up on East Beach in front of Mission Creek. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk a little bit about our federal channel dredging. It's funded by Congress, managed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They have a contract with Pacific Dredge, and they're in their 5th cycle of their 6th cycle contract. That's 3 years. We dredge twice a year. Each dredge is called a cycle. They use a sandpiper dredge, which is all electric, so it's minimum air pollution and less noise. This year, this cycle started January 10th, and it just ended today, this afternoon. Every cycle, they're contracted to do 120,000 cubic yards of removing sediment and sand from the harbor. Because we had so much sand this year, the Corps of Engineers authorized them to dredge additional 30,000 cubic yards. So on a total, it was 150,000 cubic yards this cycle. The next slide, please. This diagram shows how much sand has infiltrated the federal channel. As you can see in the center, that's where the vessels go in and out of the harbor. And the arrow indicates where the sand had encroached all the way across the channel and almost pinched it off totally. And I really like to give thanks to Harbor Patrol for monitoring the depths, because it changed every day. And they relocate shoal buoys as necessary to help guide vessels from those shallow portions of the harbor channel. They provided escort service when necessary. They also, when different boats went soft to ground on these new shoals, they helped tow them off, and they were very helpful. But this tells you how fast the harbor closes in. So we're very grateful for the federal government and Corps of Engineers to assist us in keeping our channel open. Next slide, please. This is another survey of the federal channel dated January 18th. That was last Tuesday. So they finished dredging today, and they'll provide us with an updated survey. I don't have that in hand yet, but this just shows that how well a job they did in removing all that sand that encroached the federal channel from the sand spit. Next slide, please. This is just a simple diagram that shows the Corps of Engineers has a permit to discharge sand on East Beach, and the hatched area item shows you that where they can deposit sand. And every cycle they survey the beach and try to find the best place to put the sand within that allowable area. The blue arrow indicates where they deposited sand this cycle from there to the west. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk to you a little about the Ice House renovation project. We had a budget of $0.6 million. After we got the complete scope of work completed and construction drawings done, we had a professional company estimate what it would cost to complete that scope of work, and it came in at $1.8 million. So we scratched our heads and thought about it, and we thought, well, why don't we just keep the existing equipment running for several more years by value engineering and replacing key components. So we're going to divide up the work and contract out some of the work and do other work in-house and just maintain and utilize the equipment that we have. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, go back one slide. I'd like to open it up for any questions from the Harbor Commission.
And do we have any questions? Yes, I see Michael Nelson has his hand up.
Brian, that's quite a bust. When I read your full report, it looks like you did 3 designs of this project, and all 3 of them were way off. I'm assuming that part of that was the market conditions as a result of COVID has caused estimates to go crazy, but this one is really a big problem. I was hoping that I could ask you or Mr. Wiltshire to provide the Harbor Commission with a monthly report on what you've decided and how you're going to fix this with the existing equipment, or even put this capital project back together again on a monthly basis. Because your report suggests that it's important to commercial fishermen. It's a lot more than that. It's important to the entire seafood industry as well as the supply chain. Examples are the Santa Barbara seafood market, Get Hooked, that delivers fish to 800 individuals throughout the city and all in Southern California. So this is a huge thing, and there's a reason why the commission has a commercial fisheries subcommittee. It was because of the status of the infrastructure for the commercial fishing industry. And when for the benefit of the new members, when the Harbor Commission went to the City Council to get guidance on infrastructure and the commitment that the waterfront department should make, the response by the City Council was unanimous. They didn't just see it as the importance of the infrastructure for commercial fishing. They saw the seafood industry, and particularly the upsurge in local seafood, as a way of diversifying the city's economy. So suddenly the infrastructure of the commercial fishing and seafood industry became a top priority for the city of Santa Barbara. So I hope we will remember that as we go forward with these fixes to basically use or renovate the existing facility to provide this. It's critical. It's a fundamental backbone of the commercial fishing and seafood industries and its supply chain. So if possible, and you can put it on the agenda once a month to keep us up to date, I would really appreciate it. And I hope the commercial fishing subcommittee would too. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson, we have John Stedman who's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McCray. Brian, first of all, thank you, Commissioner Nelson, for stating the broader economic argument with respect to this issue, this capital project. Brian, my question is, when you plan to go ahead with value engineering, that process, are you thinking of value engineering 0.6 million or value engineering 1.8 million?
We're going to try to stay within our budget of 0.6 million. And I can list you, I can tell you what things we've targeted. And one, we have a very strong maintenance personnel that keeps that ice equipment running really well. I have faith that it will keep producing ice. The waterfront would like to support and continue to support the fishing industry. And this is one of the key things that we do it by. So it's not going to go away, but we got to be smart about how we spend our money, when and how. We're going to keep the ice house running by making these equipment replacement components that are wearing out. So we're going to identify them and replace them and keep the ice manufacturing going. But we want to also talk about long-term. So this may keep the ice house running for 5 or 10 more years, but at the same time, we're going to talk about what is sustainable for us. What is the new technology? What location should it be? What is it going to cost us? So we're being prudent, but we're also being very mindful of the fishing industry and also be dependable to support the ice that they need.
Got it. I really appreciate your answer on that, Brian.
Yeah.
Chair McCray, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to ask a question to Commissioner Nelson. So, Commissioner Nelson, in the past, the argument was made that if the ice house were down for any appreciable amount of time, meaning, it started to impact, the operations of the commercial fishing industry, that they would simply migrate up north to Morro Bay and start getting ice. Is that a valid argument?
It could happen, but you might want to ask the Brian Colgate at the Santa Barbara Seafood Market if he had to get ice for his retail business in the harbor, as well as his off-site processing facility. If he had to go to Morro Bay to get ice, it would cause a huge impact on the cost of his operation. The same thing for Get Hooked, which, as I was saying, delivered seafood all over the Southern California. It's bigger than the fishermen. I mean, it's important to the fishermen.
Sure.
And I want you to also realize, I know I tend to exaggerate when it comes to the fishing industry, but in 2020, Santa Barbara was the leading port for dockside value of seafood in California, the entire state. It had 19 was the leader on 19 of the commercial species for both landings and dockside sales. So there is a real market for what we're doing here, and ice is the critical component, whether it's for the fishermen when they bring it off the boat, or Brian or those that actually process and sell it. So I just can't emphasize enough how important a functioning ice house is. And I have full confidence that Brian and his team will work on it. But I'm hoping that the Harbor Commission, given the fact that one of the foundational requirements placed on the city of Santa Barbara when the submerged lands was conveyed in 1925, there were 3 foundational objectives: commerce, navigation, and fisheries. It is just fundamental to the very nature, history, and operation of the working harbor, which is referenced in every document, including the local coastal plan, old master plans. Everything references the value of the ice. So it's not the kind of thing where, we had ice for 2 weeks and they can pick up in 2 weeks. It's not that way at all. So that's why I'm very much interested in the sustainable solution that Brian refers to, and it being a regular topic of discussion for the Harbor Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Anderson, Seth Anderson. He has his hand up.
My questions regard the dredging. So if there's any more ice house discussion, I don't know if it's best to continue with that before I go to the dredging.
Michael Hanrahan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McCray. Thanks, Seth, for considering continuation of the thought on the ice house. I guess my question would be, are commercial fishermen contributing to the expenses that it would take to get our ice house back up and running, or is this purely a city harbor expense?
Well, just to say, the ice house is currently producing ice. So there's no hardship currently.
To answer your question, this is a facility of the waterfront department, and they maintain it as that facility. Again, it's critical, and the city is so committed to the infrastructure of the industry. We recently got a USDA grant to, in fact, improve the infrastructure of our working waterfront, and the city matched that grant. So the city is all in on this. And you have to consider it as a port. It's not, the harbor is not simply a marina. It's also a port. And port is important to the commerce and the economic development of the city, and it requires financing. And fortunately, the city has been a great partner for the seafood industry. We have subsidized slips at the harbor that are critically important to this. But also there are fish hoists, there is the ice house. It is the fundamental infrastructure of our port, and probably the 150 or so small businesses. Every fisherman is a small business. Some of them are, vertically integrated. So it's an investment that the city makes in the industry, and the fishermen don't pay the capital cost associated with those facilities.
And to answer the other part of that question, the fishermen do pay for the ice, so it helps offset the cost of providing that service and product.
Thank you. I'm going to step back to Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, so in regards to the dredging, when someone needs to get towed, is that who do the people getting towed pay for that, or is that a cost that we incur, or who pays for the effort to tow?
If I may speak for Eric, as far as I know, there's no cost, but the vessel owners have to sign a waiver that we're not liable for any damage.
And then is the yearly dredging, how is it determined that yearly is the correct frequency? Is that by the Federal Corps of Engineers, or do we have any say on how frequently it's done?
By tradition, it's done twice a year, once in the winter, once in the spring. That's just
okay.
traditional. And
is there any sort of study, or has there been any thought around saying if we did it more frequently, there'd be less towing? Has there been the analysis on what would be least costly in regards to more dredging and less towing?
I don't think it's common for us to tow people off the soft ground. This was an unusual year, an unusual case, but I don't think it's that frequent. I've been here for 1 year. Maybe Eric later can talk about that, but I don't think it's that frequent. And there's always a lesson learned every time we do a cycle, and we'll try to work closer with the Corps of Engineers, try to get a schedule ahead of time, so we're not waiting for the last minute. But a big storm could come in and change the whole dynamics of everything. So we're kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature, but we have 2 cycles that have proven pretty good. About 1,000 during the winter season, we probably get about 1,000 cubic yards a day of infill sand. But it seems like we also have to go by from the federal government budget. They give us an annual budget of about $3.2 million. Next fiscal year, I think it's up to 3.6. It's a lot of money also to maintain this. So there's an ideal world and there's a realistic world.
And Commissioner Anderson, one bit of clarification. So the dredging operation is fully funded by the federal government. So this is a nice piece that is not funded out of the waterfront budget. It's a major expense, and they do that because we are a harbor, and so this is a fully funded by the federal government. So even any savings wouldn't necessarily be something that we would see. That would just be savings off of their federal contract.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments myself, seeing no other hands. First of all, on the ice house, that ice house is critical to our fisheries here and our local availability of fresh fish from our local Channel Islands. The idea of going to Morro Bay to get ice, you're talking about a boat that's doing 6 or maybe 8 knots or maybe 10. And I have to tell you, I have waited at Coho Anchorage for days to get around Point Conception, just to get up to Morro Bay to be there. And there's no way I would run there to get ice. In fact, in Morro Bay, when they lost their ice house after the Nature Conservancy bought all the trawl permits, that's just a portion of their commercial fishery. It really killed the rest of the commercial fishery up there in Morro Bay. And it's been a struggle to get it back going again, which it largely has with the opening up of rockfish areas more and more. With respect to just marine repairs in general, I come from an industry where we maintain sport fishing charter boats that carry the public out, the whale watching boats like the Stardust and the Coral Sea. And typically when you build a new one, there's about, the first year is a nightmare because you're finding all those engineering things that didn't quite work out right. And you really don't know all the systems very well. And it just kind of is. And then there's a couple of 3 years, maybe 5 years, which are like a honeymoon where you know everything, how it works, you've got the bugs worked out and everything is new. But after that 5 or so years, things start to break and pretty much you end up in a routine where you're continually rebuilding the boat, like the painting of the Golden Gate Bridge. And it just goes on and on. And I have to say, the oldest boat in our fleet just turned 100 years old this year. The Betty O down there in Marina del Rey has been operating for 100 years on that kind of scale, replacing fasteners and on and on. So it can work like that if that's the most economically feasible way to do it. Now, it doesn't always. Sometimes it's better just to throw it away and start new again. But that's not the only way. So there are lots of opportunities here. And I look forward to staff being able to figure out the right way to move forward and keeping us in ice. The second thing I think that's went missing from the dredging discussion is that we get sand here by virtue of what's called longshore drift. Sand comes out of river mouths and off of coastal erosion and so forth all over the coast. And then the swell pushes it down the coast. And here it runs from west, which is up, off Goleta, to the east. And so when it gets to the Santa Barbara harbor mouth, it encounters our channel, which is dredged deep. The longshore drift is pushed by wave action in the near shore. So when it hits that deep section, that current drops and all the sand load drops out right into our harbor entrance every year, year after year with regularity. And then we have to pick that sand up and move it to the other side of the harbor where it can continue its journey down to the east. Eventually, for us, it hits the canyons that are off of like Wainimi and Mugu, and then kind of disappears down in the deep sea, and the process starts over with new sand from down there. Typically, we see our biggest swells in the winter, and we see southeasters, and that really moves a lot of sand. So the 2-cycle dredging is not just tradition, but it's tradition driven by knowledge and experience. We dredge in the fall to get ready for winter, and then we dredge in the spring to get rid of what winter brought us. And so that's kind of the process and how it's worked. Sometimes Mother Nature just hands us a lot of waves, and the harbor has, in fact, entirely closed some seasons. One year for almost a month, and Queen Elizabeth was supposed to visit us that month, and everything got tied up in a knot. I just have to commend harbor staff for getting us through this winter without a closure and finding out a way to get this winter's extra sand or this summer's extra sand moved out of the way. And hopefully we'll be able to get the winter sand that's still going in there out of the way when the time comes. So that's what I have to offer. I think harbor staff has done a fantastic job. They really support us. Kudos to them. Thank you. And that, unless there's any other comments, will bring us to our next agenda item. And that goes to Mr. Eric Ingebretson.
Good evening, Chair McCray and Harbor Commissioners, and welcome Commissioners Anderson and Hanrahan. For those members of the public who don't know me, my name is Eric Ingebretson, and I'm the Harbor Operations Manager for the Waterfront Department. Good to see you all. Unfortunately, we're still virtually, but Happy New Year's to everyone in our room. Next slide, please. Just a quick recap on our annual Parade of Lights. We had our 35th year annual parade, which was held on Sunday, December 12th. We had 28 vessels decorated to the theme of Magic Under the Moonlight, and entrants made their way through the parade route, as well as an unprecedented number of 28 human-powered craft, mostly stand-up paddle boards. Some of the festivities were brought back pre-COVID times, including Santa's Village on the city pier, as well as 10 tons of snow for children of all ages to enjoy. Harbor Patrol Boat 2 escorted Santa and elves throughout the harbor and Stearns Wharf. And additionally, there was a tree lighting ceremony featured the Dos Pueblos High School Jazz Choir. And the event concluded with a 5-minute firework display. The contest itself was held online and approximately 700 votes from the public. Next slide, please. So this year's first place award winners included 5 different categories. And in our commercial fishing was the vessel Perseverance. Commercial other was the power vessel Ranger. The sailboat category was Scirocco first place. Powerboat Blueprint also claimed first place, as well as the human-powered Longaberger's kayak, which got first place as well. Next slide, please. And before I get to the East Beach mooring permit, just wanted to reach out and say what a incredible amount of work that Chris Bell, our administrative analyst, put into making the Parade of Lights go off without a hitch. He really put in a lot of work, and kudos to Chris Bell on that. And with that, we'll go ahead and start with our East Beach mooring permit renewal. The new 10-year lease between the State Lands Commission and the city was completed, and this lease runs from June 6, 2021 through June 25th, 2031. The city pays the state $3,250 a year to lease the area off East Beach, which is split into designated mooring sites. Next slide, please. So the permit with the State Lands Commission is for the water space outside the city-state tidelands grant boundary. And Angela, you might be able to pull the cursor around there. This is the area that we have our lease with. The other area we have a lease with is with the planning department, the city of Santa Barbara, which is closer to shore. Currently, we have 46 sites, 25 are unoccupied with 19 sites occupied. There are 3 within the lease area, and we do have, I believe, 3 in process at this time. And 2 of the sites are unavailable. Next slide, please. A little history on the East Beach mooring program. It was originally permitted in 2005, and the Waterfront Department began issuing permits in 2006. There are 46 designated mooring sites, as mentioned earlier. Each permittee owns and maintains their mooring tackle and pays the city an annual fee of $250 per permit. The 1,200-pound mooring is much more secure than anchoring a 40-pound anchor weight, and the city established the program to give boaters an option for keeping their boats moored versus anchored in open water. Again, permittees own their moorings and ground tackle, which are deployed by the city, a city-approved contractor. Both proof of vessel ownership and operability are also required, just as anybody renting a slip on a permanent basis in the Santa Barbara Harbor. Next slide, please. Were there any questions on the East Beach mooring permit before we move on?
Mr. John Stedman? Commissioner Stedman? You are muted.
I was just acknowledging you, Chair McCray. Eric, there have been a couple of boats, vessels that have washed up on the beach recently, right? Were those attached to the, the city-approved moorings, or were those vessels that were at anchor?
Chair McCray, Commissioner Stedman, great question. Those were at anchor. Since the inception of this program, we have not lost one boat from the permitted mooring field.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric.
Of course. Any other questions? If not, I'll move on to our mandatory boater education card. Just a quick reminder, as of January 1st.
Are all the boats out there properly documented and paid for, or are there any rogue boats that just go out there? And if there are, what do we do?
Commissioner McCray, Commissioner Anderson, the Harbor Patrol documents all vessels out in the anchorage area, whether they're in the permitted mooring area or in the free anchorage. We have documentation of all the boat owners.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Please continue.
Okay. Well, on to the mandatory boater education card. Just a quick reminder, as of January 1st, 2022, recreational boaters who are 45 years of age and younger, minimum age is 16 to get the card, are required to carry a boater education card while operating a mechanically propelled vessel in the state of California. The main reason for the recreational boater card was to promote boating safety. We didn't have it for the longest time. Folks have to go online. They pass an online course that covers a lot of topics, including personal safety equipment such as PFDs, fire extinguishers, boating rules and regulations, boating law, vessel operation of power boats, sailboats, human-powered craft, as well as personal watercraft, operational rules, accident prevention, boating and alcohol, and of course, what boating course wouldn't be complete with knot tying. After completing the course with 80% or above, you can apply for the California boating card which fulfills the boating safety education requirement, and your boating card is good for life. Failure to carry the boater education card in most jurisdictions will trigger an educational warning, and that can lead up to citations. To get more information on the boating safety courses that are available online, go to www.californiaboatercard.com. Any questions on the mandatory boater education card?
Commissioner Hanrahan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McCray. Quick question. Harbor Patrol, how will boaters be confirmed that they have a boater card? Pulled over, sort of boarded in the channel just randomly, hey, do you have your boater card? Or is it more a question after an infraction?
Great question, Chair McCray, Commissioner Hanrahan. Yeah, the Harbor Patrol will make safety stops on vessels. If we see someone with children on boats with no life jackets, we'll start off with a safety check. And with that, we'll ask to see the boater card.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I have a question. Are there any exceptions to this voter card, voter education card, say for licensed mariners, or say somebody from out of state, not from California, comes in and wants to rent a boat?
Great question, Chairman McCray. Harbor Commissioners, yes, if you are renting a boat, you do not have to have a California boating card, correct? The rental company usually will offer some sort of safety prior rules and regulations prior to renting the boat, and they are exempt, as well as commercial fishermen.
Thank you. Mr. Stedman.
No, well, we have one voter card showing there. I love it.
No, Joe Boater. That
Yeah.
Joe, he does it all. Very
All right.
good. All right, so let's see. That brings us, I believe, to new business. Go ahead.
I've still got a few things.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Nice try, but you still have it. So our next slide here is our waterfront department is pleased to announce that Nathan Aldridge has accepted the offer as our next Harbor Patrol supervisor. He was hired in 2015 with the Harbor Patrol. Nathan holds 2 degrees, one from Stanford and one from Berkeley. Water's always been close to Nathan's heart, and he's an avid swimmer. In the past, in college, he was an accomplished water polo player. Additionally, Nathan was named a California Boating Safety Officer of the Year in 2017, and that was just 2 weeks after being on the job full-time with the Harbor Patrol. Nathan most recently completed continuing education in harbor administration from the University of Alaska Southeast. So look out, Eric. I've got somebody on my heels here really quick. And with that, if Nathan's here, I would like him to introduce himself.
All right.
Very good. I'm sorry for almost passing you over, Nathan. This is your
Yeah, not at all.
Yes.
Okay, hope you guys can hear me okay. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, Eric. It's nice seeing some familiar faces. And for those of you that I don't know, please stop by the harbor and introduce yourself and say hello next time you're down in the waterfront. I am honored to serve the city of Santa Barbara and our waterfront as the new supervisor, and look forward to continuing to provide our community with the highest level of service. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. Quite a list of accomplishments I see here.
Wow, impressive.
Yes.
Next slide, please. So our tsunami event on January 15th, 2022, we had an underwater volcano erupted off of Tonga, which created a tsunami advisory along the west coast of the US. Lucky for Santa Barbara Harbor, we experienced, a relatively small event. We had multiple 1-foot surges throughout the day, with most of those surges coming in between 8 a.m., between 4 in the afternoon to 10 p.m. They created about a 3 to 4 knot current through the main channel in the vicinity of the dredge, and subsided by about midnight. Next slide, please. So the Harbor Patrol used the Santa Barbara Harbor and the Santa Barbara County's Maritime Tsunami Response Playbook to monitor the predicted surge in our area. Officers were able to collect past information from 2011 tsunami event that occurred in Japan, which is pictured. This particular event damaged equipment, including the bait barge and the dredge as well. For our notifications, we notified the dredge company, and they did shut down for 20 hours just to be safe. There was some current, but again, it was minimal. For our benchmark, for the advisory, it remained in place until 10:30 at night, after which time it became tsunami watch. Any questions on this particular slide?
Looks like Commissioner Nelson.
I read an article about Santa Cruz Harbor, and their harbor patrol apparently actually went boat to boat telling people what was going on. Do we have to do anything like that, or because of the limited surge, we didn't have to? I'm just curious.
No, great question, Chair McCray. Our staff did make some contacts with boaters and did make them aware of the advisory. It was not a warning, so we don't go through the reverse 911 system or the Blackboard Connect on an advisory. We do know from the past, and particularly from this playbook, that Santa Cruz is susceptible to more damage. It funnels those surges funnel in. And so they're aware of what happened in 2011 was pretty serious, and that even though this was a smaller event, there was a chance for damage just due to the topography in that area. That wasn't the case for us. Okay. And with my next slide, might be able to give you a little more insight here. So if you look at this slide closely, it just shows different reporting stations all the way up from Alaska down to San Diego. And you can see that some of the areas, in particular, Port San Luis had some substantial flooding. They had a 4-foot surge. And then we had other areas like La Jolla with 0.6 feet, a half a foot surge. So yeah, it really was pretty interesting how it fluctuated throughout the coast of California, and why some ports to the north and south of us did not fare as well as we did. That said, it appears that there's a combination of local factors why we weren't affected that much, but we're still trying to get confirmation from folks at Scripps Institute as well as NOAA.
Yeah, and the article I read said that Avila had like 4.5 feet, which to me is not that far.
No, yeah, great, yeah, it's amazing. You think that if it's 4 feet there, we should be somewhere close, and it just really wasn't the case. And Ventura Harbor, they lost a harbor patrol boat. They had damage to their docks, and that was just down in Ventura. Talked to the dredge folks. They said, they could see some surge out there, but nothing at all close to what we had in 2011.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
Commissioner Stedman has his hand up.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Chair McCray. I was just going to comment on the point made by Commissioner Nelson, the sort of the vessel warning up in Santa Cruz. There's some drone footage out there from Santa Cruz Harbor, and you look at their dredge barge, it was ready to break its moorings. And if that would have happened, it would have just pinballed right into that narrow harbor up in Santa Cruz. And having been there in 2011, having a boat at the Santa Cruz Yacht Club, that surge went up to the Murray Street Bridge, which is a street bridge that crosses right over, it bisects Santa Cruz Harbor. And I've never seen anything like it. So they were pretty close to some catastrophe up in Santa Cruz. So good to see that, they have a warning system in place.
Great. If there's no other question, that
Yeah, I do.
concludes the report.
Betsy Kramer.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Eric, for your report. I was wondering if you know what the characteristics of the port underwater shape are, as to why it would have 4-foot rise and,
That's a great question, Commissioner Kramer, Chair McCray. Don't know exactly why, whether they have any kind of canyons that would amplify that surge. I did speak with Ryan Kittle from NOAA, and he thinks it's a combination of things why we might not have had some of the issues that they had up north, but I suspect it has something to do with topography, angle of the swell,
Right.
and probably how the harbor is configured itself.
Great, thank you. Be curious to see, actually. I should do a little bit more looking into it. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Michael Hanrahan.
Thank you, Chair McCray. Quick question: what is the current protocol if there was to be a significant tsunami, as far as notifying local boards, businesses, the general public? What is the current protocol, or how can I'm sure it's something that exists, I can research it, but just in brief, what is done? What does the harbor consider its responsibility regarding an incoming tsunami that is a threat?
So the number one priority, Commissioner McCray, or Chair McCray, Commissioner Hanrahan, the number one is public safety. So all part of the reverse 911 system through dispatch, our combined communications system with the city of Santa Barbara, folks would be notified of an incoming warning when it gets to that threshold, for example. If additionally, the waterfront department we would notify through Blackboard Connect to our harbor users. We want to be careful because those are just slip permittees that are on the Blackboard Connect system. And we really want people to think about themselves and not their property. So we want them to evacuate. And there has been some discussion, gosh, as soon as we notify folks through Blackboard Connect, they race down because they want to jump on their boats to get to, I believe it's 30 fathoms to be safe from a tsunami, a substantial tsunami. So that's not always the best idea. And folks trying to remove their boats from the launch ramp and what have you. So we probably stick with the 911 or reverse 911 system, notifying folks to evacuate. And that's what's in place at this time.
Very good, thank you. I got a couple of comments. First of all, the crest to crest distance of one of these tidal waves, the wave itself starts to touch bottom at 7 times that distance, which can be miles. And as it hits shallower water, which in this case is thousands of feet sometimes, it tends to lead to the wave turning in on itself. And so that can amplify where it hits highest on the coast. Long, narrow harbors for these smaller tidal waves, they tend to increase the height at the back. It just kind of surges in there. And then in particular of concern for us, I think, is those harbors that have a lot of interior surface area for the width of the entrance. Those are the ones that get the heavy current. So for example, in Ventura, and they've got a lot of new construction and new channels back there. And I think that increased the amount of current coming in and out, because just a few inches difference in height can be an awful lot of water to fill that in through all those channels. So I think those are the main effects. And I think the take home for Santa Barbara is we kind of really don't have a lot of those kinds of, it's not a long, narrow harbor. There's not a lot of surface area for the width of the entrance. We are behind some islands. So I think past experience is probably the best indicator of how fearful to be. So thank you for your presentation. I think we're safe to move on to new business, and I'll turn to Mr. Mike Wiltshire.
Yeah, okay, perfect. No, this has been great conversation, very thorough meeting. So the next couple items that I've got are fairly quick. Wait till that slide gets up from Angela, but in short, staff has laid out a list of tentative items for the coming year. I like to do this at the start of the year in the January meeting. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's really just informational and intended to kind of help us as staff as much as anything to kind of start planning for these meetings and getting things sorted out in advance. A number of the items on our meetings are very routine, so like lease renewals and committee assignments, election of chair, just kind of the stuff that we have to do by way of routine. But there is some non-routine stuff that we are planning in this year and on out years as well. So without diving too deep into this, I'll call out a couple of the items that were kind of the bigger non-routine things we're looking to discuss. I know we're kind of looking to discuss insurance requirements for vessels in the harbor. And so we have that slated out in this year. We are looking for an update from the commercial fishermen on the maritime collective efforts. I think the Harbor Commission's been kind of waiting to hear back from them. And so we'll try and coordinate a time that works best for them to report back on that. And additionally, we're going to be getting to our waterfront municipal code updates. So that'll be in the out years. So as you can see, there's still a decent amount of space for items to be added kind of as they arise. But this was really kind of to give the entire Harbor Commission and the new Harbor Commissioners an idea of what the year looks like, how we can kind of line these meetings up. In addition, I'd like to mention that we are proposing to cancel the July and December meeting. This is very typical. We've done this in years past, and it's sort of one meeting canceled for summer break and one for the winter break. With that, there's really no specific action requested on this item, but I will turn it back to the commission for discussion, and would be a good time if there is any open discussion on items or how we do things and when staff can get them slotted into meetings. So Commissioner, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Director Wiltshire. Yeah, just regarding the April agenda, I know the municipal code update has been kind of on our tentative agenda for a while. Was there any specific items of the municipal code for the harbor that are being targeted? I know in the past there was just the definition of like a sublicense was a big issue. I think in one of the summer meetings, also like defining like a sublease and assignment of costs was something. I think we had public comments regarding that a few months ago. And I'm just curious if there's ones or specific items of the municipal code that that you think that the Harbor Commission should specifically discuss, or things that are kind of like being targeted right now for discussion.
Yeah, Commissioner Stano, great question.
Good question.
Typically, we try and do this every year or two. There's a lot that goes into Muni Code updates. It involves our attorneys, it involves Harbor Commission, it goes to council. And so it's kind of this long drawn out process. A couple of the key ones on it this year that have been pending are, like you mentioned, the subleasing clause and cleaning up that language. The other one is operability and kind of fine tuning that language. A lot of this code gets written with the best intention in mind, and then as it kind of stays over time, people find ways around it and to do different things, and it kind of loses its intention. And so it's really intended to just kind of clean up that language so that the kind of spirit matches the word of the code. And we'll bring that back to the Harbor Commission in its entirety. And so what we do is kind of comb through our municipal code, make all the cleanups we need, run them through our attorney to make sure it's all above board legally. Then we'll bring it back to the Harbor Commission so that you guys can kind of discuss and work on it. And once it goes through you, then we ultimately have to take it to council for approval as well, because they approve municipal code changes. I hope that helped.
Yep, it did. Yeah, thanks.
Great question, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. I see no hands, and there's a lot of information on here. Do we need more time? Seeing no indication, I guess we're fair to move on.
One question. I don't have, I really like this. I like this format. It really helps me get an idea of what's being forecasted for the year. But back to the municipal code update thing. So you said you'd send it to us. I mean, it would be great if we could receive it, what you're working on, and then we could say, we could ask some questions before you bring it back to us for approval. A lot of times, time is not available for us to comment before we're asked to vote. So I don't know if that was your intent when you answered Adam's question or not.
Yeah, Commissioner Nelson, I think I know where you're going. No, I agree. And it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing. So municipal code updates are something that is done operationally on our end as staff. We bring them to you for approval to basically relay to forward your approval to council. And so it's not necessarily something that is in the purview for the Harbor Commission to be crafting the policy. That is sort of staff's job. And we bring that policy to the Harbor Commission for approval and ultimately recommendation to council.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I believe that brings us to the determination of meeting date, time, and location. And so staff has some options.
Yeah, and Chair McCray, I'm happy to hop in here. And the only reason I put this in is I'd like to just take a minute and talk about meeting dates and times. There's been a lot of change with new commissioners and staff. We've been virtual for almost a couple years now. So it really kind of lends itself as we slowly start trying to get back to in-person meetings to touch base with you as Harbor Commission to make sure that the meeting time and the place and all of that still makes the most sense for Harbor Commissioners, for staff and the public. And so it can ultimately stay status quo, but I did want to give you guys the opportunity as the meeting location and time is something that is completely set by the Harbor Commission. So that is something that you determine through a motion and an action and a vote. And so I wanted to present a few options to you to see if it was of even of interest to kind of change the date and the time of the meeting or the location.
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chair.
I was just going to ask for questions for the presenter. Do we have questions?
Yeah, well,
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Betsy.
Yeah, Mike, is the fourth Thursday the only time that the David Gebhardt room can be chosen? It seems to me that that is preferable to the city council chambers. It's much more accessible for the public and it's much less formal and so forth. And
yeah, Commissioner Crary hit the nail on the head. That's kind of exactly what got me thinking about this. The David Gebhardt room, for those who haven't been in there, is able to be televised, but it is a little bit more informal, and it's got the commissioners would sit kind of at tables at level with the people who are attending the meeting.
exactly.
Which is nice. There's still ample parking. So this was one of the most convenient times that we found that was available. This isn't an exhaustive list of times, but I kind of wanted to check with the commission if there was an interest in changing the location and the time. A totally reasonable way out of this would be you could just recommend that staff go find a slew of times in the Gebhardt room, and we can come back to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think that would be a preferable choice, but I'd like to hear what others think.
Do we have any other questions?
I've sat in commission meetings in the David Gebhardt room and obviously in council chambers with all of, all of this commission. I agree with the points made about the accessibility for the David Gebhardt room. Parking is probably a little better too, right? I mean, there's some adjacent parking and street parking. My question is, when would we actually be meeting in person? Is that something we have information on, or are we projecting any kind of dates, Director Wiltshire?
Chair Stedman, as of November, council and all of us were kind of gearing up to be back in person by January and February. Obviously, Omicron kind of derailed that completely. So we're really kind of leaning on the case counts coming way down. So depending on where this goes sort of medically, which we're not the professionals there, but I don't know, from everything that everybody says, this seems to be a spike. Hopefully it recedes quickly. Maybe by March, April, there's a potential chance we may be meeting in person if case counts are low and we can do so safely.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I have a question. Will there be a virtual option if we do decide to go back to be in person? Like prior to this, if you weren't in Santa Barbara during the meeting pre-pandemic, you just weren't able to attend the meetings. But will there be an option, like if we do have some kind of scheduling conflict and are out of town, that we could be remote while everybody else is in person? Or is that kind of out of the question right now?
Yeah, Commissioner Stanley, no, good question. That's what the city's kind of grappling with, both legally and practically. It's really tough to kind of conduct a meeting that's part in person and part virtual. We've sort of struggled with that a little bit. The other thing is kind of the legal side of things. So the Brown Act governs how these meetings are held. There's been sort of a continuing stay in the Brown Act while COVID has been present. So a lot of that is sort of driven by the state who governs the Brown Act. Once they kind of remove those restrictions and say, hey, let's meet back in person, it will kind of be, essentially we'll be obligated to go back to how it was. So it'll be an in-person meeting governed how it was previously by the Brown Act.
I share your imagination on that though, Adam. I mean, the in-person meetings do impose a little bit different responsibility, right? I mean, and you never want to miss a meeting. It feels badly. So hopefully we can come up with some type of solution, maybe between the state and city policy.
Yeah, there's still work to happen there. And so we're definitely not going to be the first to the party on the meeting in person. And so there'll be sort of direction statewide on how we have to conduct ourselves.
Right.
Commissioner Kramer?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
All right, I just wanted to make sure you didn't miss out.
So I'll raise my hand then.
Go ahead.
So, what are you expecting from us, Mike? Do you want dates from people as to what would be possible in time, or direction to you?
Yeah.
To what effect?
Chair McCray, Commissioner Kramer, there's a couple ways out of this one. Somebody can make a motion for staff to further investigate if we do agree on the Gephardt room. The Harbor Commission could make a motion on leaving it status quo, or if one of these times suits somebody in particular, we could make a motion on that. It could be determined this meeting if you guys did want to change and pick a new time and location. Any of the times and locations on this list would be suitable. So whatever you as a commission wants to decide, but picking the meeting and location is ultimately an action that needs to be decided by the full commission.
Great,
Before we
thank
go
you.
to motions, just in case somebody has that in mind, I'd like to put a call out and make sure that we don't have any public comment on this agenda item already.
At this time, we don't have any hands raised from the public.
Great, thank you. Go ahead and carry on. Is there further discussion? All right, so we have a couple of options. Somebody could move to look at times for the David Gebhardt room. Staff would take a look at that and come back to us at a later time and tell us what the full range of are there. Somebody could move for any one of these particular options that are there, or it'd be kind of dangerous to just kind of pick a venue and time of your own choosing, because we won't know if it's available, of course. We do know that status quo is available. I'm kind of in favor of that, but I have no experience of the Gebhardt room. My primary and sole reason for being in favor of status quo myself is that that's when people who, especially people who only come in and occasionally, that's when and where they expect to find us. But
Right.
the advantages of the David Gebhardt room could, especially if we got the same time, could make that more attractive. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Chairman McCray. I mean, maybe keep one. In other words, if we're going to consider changing location, we shouldn't also consider changing the day that we meet, right? So we don't completely baffle, the public that does like to attend. I know there are people, who have been used to us in council chambers on the third Thursday for a long time. But I'm certainly open-minded, to explore the Gebhardt option. So,
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with both. Yeah, I think I think changing the time will be difficult because I know there was a lot of people, even when we were doing the subcommittee meetings, that there was some backlash. I know the slip assignment one, where it was like at 3 o'clock, you had a lot of people of the public who actually weren't able to attend because it was during the work hours. And yeah, I think leaving the time is probably good because people know that is when we do meet. But I would be in favor if we wanted to explore the David Gebhardt room for location purposes.
concur. I concur with Commissioner Stanwyck.
Well, I'll make a motion then that requesting Mike Wiltshire to look into the availability of the David Gebhardt room.
Fair enough. I mean, that sounds pretty general. I would second Commissioner Kramer's motion.
All right, so it's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Betsy, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I think everything's been said about it at this point. But I think Adam's point about the time is very, very valid. And I don't think that many people actually come to the Harbor Commission meetings, that they would be disturbed if we weren't at the city council, since we haven't been there for almost 2 years.
Good.
So,
Seeing no other hands, I guess I'll call the question and we'll, and there's Angela. Would you do us the honor?
Of course. Commissioner Kramer,
yes.
Commissioner Hannaran,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanwyck,
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Chair McCray.
Yes,
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
very good. Good work.
And just a quick point of clarification to the Harbor Commission, if we do make any changes to the meeting time or place, that will be on staff to properly notice that. We can even kind of post notices on the regular old meeting time to make sure that there's not a meeting missed. I think there's quite a lot of ways for us to make sure that anybody who showed up at City Council on the third Thursday would be aware that they wouldn't miss another meeting somewhere else. So we can take that on us to kind of mark it and clarify that if we do end up making a change.
Great. And there would also be consideration of coordinating it with the city TV and all that.
Yes, absolutely. That would all be on us, and we've kind of already looked into that. So that was the one of the reasons for these posted times, but there could be more at the David Gebhardt room. So hearing that there's an interest in the Gebhardt room, we can kind of dig a little deeper and bring that back.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
So we have the Santa Barbara Cruise Ship Program update.
All right.
Let's see who's doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McCray. Final item of the night. I'm actually going to introduce Chris Bell. He's been mentioned a couple of times tonight, but he does just a ton of amazing stuff for the waterfront department. He also is kind of our point person on the cruise ship program. He really is the one who is the most in the know. So Chris Bell is going to give a quick presentation on kind of the history of the cruise ship program and where we're at. This is kind of more of an informational item for the commission, but I think it'll be an interesting presentation. So Chris, over to you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. As Mike said, I'm Chris Bell. administrative analyst at the Waterfront Department and in charge of coordinating the cruise ship program. And the following is a summary of that program. Next slide, please. We'll start off with a little history. In the late 1990s, the department was approached by a couple of cruise lines interested in coming to Santa Barbara. After a few years working out the details with Coast Guard and Customs and Border Patrol, we hosted the first cruise ship in 2002. There weren't many calls in the early years, but as the industry learned what a great port of call Santa Barbara was, more visits were booked. To strike a balance between benefits and impacts, calls were limited to the non-peak tourist seasons of September through May. Next slide, please. So here we see the numbers of calls over the last 11 years, and you can see the 2020 and 2021 seasons were severely impacted by COVID. We'll get into that a little bit more detail later in the presentation. Next slide. The majority of our calls are from two cruise lines, Princess and Holland America. The most popular itineraries that include Santa Barbara are variations of a West Coast getaway that start in Los Angeles or San Diego or Seattle, and they often feature stops in Catalina, San Diego, and Ensenada. Most of the passengers on these cruises are from the West Coast. The ships that visit Santa Barbara are considered to be small to medium-sized by industry standards, carrying anywhere from 200 to 3,500 people. Next slide. In 2013, Visit Santa Barbara conducted a survey of cruise ship passengers, and we learned a lot from the results. Annualizing the results of the survey across the previous calendar year, it was estimated that the cruise industry had a $2.4 million economic impact on Santa Barbara, of which $280,000 went to the city in the form of passenger fees and sales tax. The survey also noted that 41% of the passengers who had never been to Santa Barbara before said they were likely to return within 24 months, which could lead to an additional $6.3 million in direct visitor spending. Next slide. Okay, so how does this all work? Obviously, we don't have the facilities to dock ships of this size. So what they do is they anchor about a mile offshore and they tender visitors to Santa Barbara Landing on boats like the ones you see in this photo here. The Waterfront Department charges the cruise line $7 for every passenger on board, regardless of whether they come ashore or not. Next slide. Once at Santa Barbara Landing, passengers are offloaded into a secure area staffed by cruise ship personnel and a team of Coast Guard approved security contractors. The landing handles the arrangements for the security and the use of the docks. Next slide. Once outside the secure area, cruise ship visitors are met by ambassadors who help them with directions, hand out brochures, and answer a lot of questions. The cruise ship ambassadors are mostly volunteers coordinated through the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, and they are rock stars. Next slide. We also hire 2 uniformed Santa Barbara PD officers to be on the premises during the entirety of the cruise ship call. And besides providing additional security presence, the officers also close a lane of eastbound Cabrillo Boulevard to allow the safe ingress and egress of all the buses and shuttles and trolleys that the passengers use. Next slide, please. And here's an example. You've got many cruise ship passengers book these excursions beforehand through the cruise lines. And here you can see a Santa Barbara trolley company with lots of cruise ship passengers getting aboard. You'll also notice, if you can see in the middle of that slide, there's that sign with the T. That's all directional signage that we provide, the Waterfront provides throughout the area to help people get to where they're going. Next slide, please. A lot of passengers don't book excursions and they prefer to explore the city on their own. And to help them on their way, we do provide a free shuttle service with stops around downtown. And this service is very popular and it helps get these visitors closer to the doorsteps of local businesses. Next slide. Okay, we'll talk about COVID a little bit and its impacts on the cruise ship program. In March of 2020, the CDC issued a no sail order, essentially shutting down the entire industry. In October of 2020, the no sail order was replaced by a conditional sailing order that laid out a pathway for the resumption of cruising. The conditional sailing order became voluntary just last week, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail in the next slides. But since the no sail order was put into place, 45 cruise ship calls to Santa Barbara have been canceled. Next slide. The conditional sailing order, or CSO, was a framework for the phased resumption of cruise operations. And what the order did was it established requirements to mitigate COVID-19 risks to passengers and crew and to protect public health and safety. The CSO called for trial voyages with limited capacity to test the effectiveness of the mitigations. And the cruise ships could bypass those trials by committing to requiring near universal vaccinations of passengers and crew. Next slide. All of the major cruise lines committed to the vaccination option and are currently still operating with more than 95% of passengers and crew being vaccinated. Some of the other measures called out in the CSO include onboard COVID testing capabilities and COVID protocols we've all come to know and love. The conditional sailing order also called for formal agreements between cruise lines and the ports they visited, and that commits the cruise lines to transport and treat serious COVID patients to their home port cities. In other words, if there were any serious cases of COVID on board, those patients would not be transported or treated by our health professionals or first responders. Next slide, please. Here are those protocols that I alluded to that we're familiar with. An important item on this list being testing. A negative PCR or antigen test is required within 2 days of embarkation, and that is currently still being required by all the major cruise lines. Next slide. All right, a little bit about cruise ships and the environment. The waste streams of cruise ships are regulated by a host of entities, laws, regulations, standards. And they're enforced by entities such as the EPA and the International Maritime Organization. Next slide. The good news is these regulations are getting stricter. I picked out one example, but they're pretty much getting stricter across the board. This example here is new standards for sulfur content in the fuel cruise ships use. It reduces the sulfur oxide emissions by 77%. Next slide. And so what are our regulations and how are they enforced? We do have some requirements that go above and beyond federal and international standards, and we have the captain of every cruise ship that visits Santa Barbara sign a declaration stating that they will abide by the requirements and that they will notify us of any accidental discharges. An example of one of these items on the declaration is the no discharge of garbage, treated sewage, gray water, nor conventional sewage within 12 nautical miles of Santa Barbara. Next slide. So to the future, what's the future of the cruise ship program look like? If there is a silver lining from the pandemic shutdown, it's that many of the older ships were scrapped and they are being replaced by newer, more efficient ones. Many of the new ones run on alternative fuels and are hybrids. There is a strong pent-up demand and our reservations reflect this. You can see we have 34 calls on the schedule for this year and 28 for 2023. In summary, Mr. Chair, the cruise ship program is a mature program with a team and staff of staff and volunteers dedicated to safety, hospitality, and to showing visitors what an amazing place Santa Barbara is. The program is in a strong position to welcome ships back to Santa Barbara when health authorities say it is safe to do so. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And I'm not seeing any hands. Do we have?
Oh, actually,
questions?
I have one quick question. Yeah, I noticed that the cruise ship program is confined to the non-peak season, but I think in the past it was also confined to non-weekends. Is that the case going forward?
At this time, there's no hard and fast rule that we apply to weekends or non-weekends. We just try and emphasize non-weekend visits, especially as it gets closer to the busier seasons.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Unfortunately, I didn't see whose hand came up first, so.
That didn't make any difference. I'm patient.
So we'll, let's call on Betsy.
Okay, two questions. One tiny one. What are alternative fuels for cruise ships?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kramer, and apologies, Commissioner Stanwyck, from before. Some of the ships you're seeing now are running on, they're trying out hydrogen and natural gas.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. And the other question is really directed to Mike Wiltshire. Will the Santa Barbara County Health Department weigh in on this? Do they have any opinion on the return of cruise ships?
Commissioner Kramer, yeah, great question. Myself and Chris are in contact with Santa Barbara County Health. Their main concerns involve any issues with any cases or positive cases impacting our healthcare system. That really wouldn't be the case. We're not a home port, and we do have the flexibility to kind of dictate to cruise ships that we wouldn't receive any COVID positive patients. And so there's really not a way that they would end up in our healthcare system. And at this time, that's sort of the county health's main concern. And so that's sort of been quashed by the fact that if there were an outbreak, that ship would not remain here. It would return to its home port of Los Angeles. And really any COVID patients would not be taken in through our healthcare systems.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I suspect that the concern of the public would be that there might be some passengers that are, even though they've been vaccinated and so forth, are carriers, so to speak, and might infect Santa Barbara's. And I don't know what can be done about that, if anything.
Yeah, Commissioner Kramer, that's a good point too. I think that we're kind of at the point with this pandemic where, I mean, the cruise ships passengers are by and large vaccinated at a higher percentage and tested more recently than even the general public. And so it's hard to say that it would be any more likely receiving any sort of ill effects from a cruise ship passenger or a restaurant or something in town. This thing really does seem to be everywhere at this point. So I understand the thoughts there, but it should be something to said that the cruise ship industry is one of the most heavily regulated industries, even more so than flying and driving up from Los Angeles and all these other ways that people get here.
Great, thank you very much.
Did you say, Chris, that there had been like 40 plus cruise liners canceled for Santa Barbara?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Nelson, that's correct. Yeah, I think the total was 45 over the last year and a half, 2 years.
And is it correct that those same boats went to San Diego? I mean,
partially, I would say, Commissioner Nelson, most of those were canceled during the no sail order. So the industry as a whole was pretty much shut down. And others were canceled during the conditional sail order. So they were able to do it, but we just didn't allow them to come.
So when's the next decision point for us?
This was more informational, and so again, we can bring this back to you. The beauty is we have a little bit of time, so we have a couple months, but we have a couple months before the first ship would be scheduled to arrive. I believe March 16th, as of now, is the schedule. From the cruise line side, it's been really dynamic. So Chris is in touch with them almost daily, and they're sort of jockeying schedules around. Something to note is the majority of the cruise ship ports up and down the West Coast are operating. Catalina, LA, Long Beach. Chris knows the list better than I, but the vast majority are operating and receiving cruise ships.
So would it help? I guess the issue is, will there be a time when it would help for the commission to take a position on allowing cruise vessels to land again? Because it's a huge economic impact. You know, the city's trying to revitalize State Street. You know, we're in the business at Stearns Wharf. 50% of everybody that visits Santa Barbara goes to Stearns Wharf and the harbor. My only thought was, and the other thought was, what would, if you were to call, you know, Jamie Dimon and ask her what she felt about it, would she see that as a positive for the new sea landing operators? Would they appreciate the benefit of these passengers unloading there, or would they see it as, oh my God?
Oh, Commissioner Kramer, I can tell you just anecdotally, with Santa Barbara Landing acting as our basically our site security officer, they generate a fairly large revenue stream every time these cruise ships come in.
Yeah, I thought so.
They receive a reasonable amount of revenue for acting and providing that service of receiving the passengers.
Well, I hope we'll bring it back to us, because I'm prepared to vote.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things that receiving your comments and acting in an advisory capacity is certainly helpful. Our take right now is that this is a long running program that is very well run and will hopefully come back to the waterfront. And so we're just, all that we're waiting on is sort of the health recommendations, CDC, county health. And once that all lines up, this program should be able to be reinstated as it was in the past.
That's great news.
Quick question. Chair McCray and the commission and staff. So are you suggesting, Commissioner Nelson, that we write a letter, an advisory letter to be presented via the Water Department to City Council?
No, if the decision is made by the Waterfront Department, I'm of the disposition to support a decision to allow the cruise liners to land again. If Mike has to go, you know, to county health and everybody else, good luck and go for it. But as far as we are concerned, it's a real positive thing. And if the cruise lines are highly regulated from an environmental standpoint and a public health standpoint, I don't know. I think we would be making a mistake not to allow them to unload here.
I mean, Director Wiltshire, it is possible that the commission could create a letter, right, that you could present to City Council.
Yeah, and City Council, Chair McCray, Commissioner Stedman, City Council really respects your views, and so do we as the Waterfront Department. So everything as we go forward through this sort of uncertain time would be hugely helpful for the City Council to be aware of your position on this as the Harbor Commission. I think that would carry a lot of weight. Some of the other entities who have and will be weighing in it, if and when this does go to council, are Visit Santa Barbara, the City Chamber of Commerce. So I know there's a lot of input on either side, but hearing from your guys' opinion would be very valuable.
Commissioner Nelson, maybe you would like to motion for that.
You know, I think, I know we did receive one written public comment. Angela, do we have anybody out there that's interested in providing comment before we get any further?
Yes, at this time we do have someone, excuse me. At this time we do have someone with their hand raised, Miss Jamie Dimon. Would you like me to call on her now then?
Yes, please do. We should have called on her before we got into much discussion.
Miss Dimon, I'm gonna unmute you and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Commissioners, Chair McCray, Commissioners, Mr. Wiltshire. Mr. Nelson, thank you for bringing that up. We are very happy and eager to welcome cruise ships through the landing We have worked very, very hard over the last several months to be able to do so, getting all the necessary governmental clearances. We spent a fair amount of time creating our facility security plan per Coast Guard. It's with them right now. I am going to a 2-day facility security officer training on Tuesday and Wednesday. We have our TWIC cards. I have security on standby, tenting on standby, fencing on standby, everything in a holding pattern ready to go to welcome these cruise ships. I'd also like to offer any assistance as far as letter writing or public comment to support the waterfront at any advisory bodies, at Board of Supervisors or City Council. We would be more than happy to provide that support. And we appreciate your intent, commissioners, to support this going forward as well. Of course, with public safety at the forefront of how we act and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jamie Dimon. It's good to hear from you. Congratulations. We're glad to see that the whole operation is up and running with coffee to come. Please carry on. Mr. Nelson?
John, are you suggesting that a resolution or just a letter from the Harbor Commission supporting the return of cruise liners to the Santa Barbara Harbor, provided the county public health department and all the other appropriate regulatory bodies approve it? I'm very happy making a motion to that effect.
Yeah, the latter,
Okay.
a letter.
Okay.
And Harbor Commission and Chair McCray, a letter is a good way to go. And another option to get your opinions to council are to, if you guys would like to nominate essentially a spokesperson to speak at council and carry the views forward of the Harbor Commission. That's another way as well.
Great suggestion.
That sounds like a great idea. So if somebody wanted to make a motion, I would kind of expect that they would also stand up and be our spokesperson.
I'm happy to make
And the
motion.
letter writer.
I'm happy to make the motion, write the letter, and stand up.
I second that motion.
All right. I guess let's take it to a roll call vote. I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is going to be, and hopefully we'll have a letter to look at.
Okay, Commissioner Hanrahan? Oh, it appears you're muted.
Sorry about that. Indeed, I was muted. I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stanwyck?
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kramer?
Yes, I guess so.
Chair McCray?
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous with one abstention.
All right, very good. Good work. So I'm expecting we'll have a letter to look at, and maybe we'll do some wordsmithing. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes.
I'll be happy to submit a draft to you.
Great. I believe that concludes this item. So I'm going to look to see if we have any subcommittee reports this evening.
There are no new subcommittee updates from the slip assignment policy subcommittee.
And seeing no hands elsewhere, I'm going to presume that there are none. Yes. There are commission and staff communications.
Yes, I've got one. I heard through the grapevine, so to speak, that Sea Landing is going to have some sort of event on February 5th, on Saturday, February 5th. And I wonder if staff knows anything about this and could speak to it.
Commissioner Kramer, I don't offhand. I can get that message out to you by email or turn to my colleagues and see if
Well,
there's
perhaps
Bossy or
If
Engbretson.
Mr. Bossy is still there, perhaps he knows something about it?
I'm going to ask and see if we have any public commenters on this.
We actually do have a public comments from Jamie Diamond, if you'd like me to call on her to answer.
Okay.
All right, Miss Diamond, I'm going to allow you to speak and you may begin.
Hi again, commissioners. I actually spoke with Mr. Bossy about a week and a half ago about this. We intend to host a day at the docks on February 5th. We are making our premises, our boats, our docks available to the public to come and visit, walk around on the boats, meet the crew. We're going to have a Department of Fish and Wildlife table with regulations for fishing. We're hoping to have NOAA sanctuaries represented there. California Coastal Commission will, or excuse me, Coastal Conservation Association of California will be there. Get your picture taken with a mermaid on one of the boats, dock fishing for the kids, fishing seminars, and also some used gear for sale. And rumor has it, our much anticipated coffee roaster partner may even be there, providing some yummy coffee for everybody as well. So of course this it's open air, we're outside. We will have to limit the number of people on the docks for safety purposes, but we want the public to feel welcome to come and see the vessels and see the landing, see what we have to offer at Santa Barbara Landing. And we hope to see you all there.
What time will this be?
It's going to be all day on Saturday the 5th. So 8 to 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diamond.
Any other questions that I can answer while I'm here?
Sounds exciting, Jamie.
Thanks.
Very well.
I have one communication. I always violate the Brown Act sometime, but so I figure this is a safe zone for me. I read an article in the News Hawk about a judicial decision regarding a death off of a paddleboard, and it involves a rental that occurred in the harbor. And I'm just curious what this involved the Santa Barbara Sailing Center. So it sounded like the judge was saying the city had no culpability, but our tenant, I guess the sailing club did or could have, and the case continued. I'm just curious. I'm seeking information about it. It doesn't have to happen today or tonight. If you would, send me an email, that'd be great.
Yeah, Commissioner Nelson, we can get back to you on that. I don't want to speak on it because I don't have enough information on it right now.
Okay, that's great.
Would you share it with all of us, Mr. Wiltshire?
Yeah, Commissioner Kramer, I'm happy to share what information I can find and
Thank you.
I'm able to share.
Thank you.
Further communications?
On the staff side, another hearty congratulations and welcome to Commissioner Anderson and Hanrahan. This was a bit of a long meeting, so no more staff communications on our end.
Very good. All right, so that brings us right to the end of the end. So I'm looking for a motion. Motion to adjourn. You guys want to stay here?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to move right to our administrative assistant for assistance.
Okay, Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
All right. Commissioner Stanowik?
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanrahan?
Aye.
Chair McCray?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you all.
unanimous. Thank you.
Another successful meeting in the books.